Good morning. It's about 7 a.m. and I'm in the city of London. I've just ridden in, so the Estarli 20.7 has done its day job, which is getting me into London and back. So I've had this 2 years now, and if we look at the mileage, it is 4160, so 4,000 miles. And that's fair. 4,000 miles of fairly hard use because it's commuting in all weathers, and it's off-road use as well. So I tend to use it as a bit of a mountain bike. It's not designed for that. And of course, it's an electric bike, and it's folding. So this is why I use it for commuting, because I can fold it and put it on the train. And you'll see from my other videos, I talk about the features of the bike. I give a demonstration of its use, folding it, etc., and various maintenance bits and pieces. So what I want to talk about today is basically give it a long-term review. So after 2 years, what's it been like as a bike? 2 years of really heavy use. So today I'm going to talk about how much was the Estarli, what it's like to ride, what accessories I've bought with it, how good is it to transport, what I've used it for, and what I've managed to break and what I've worn out, and also how much of those things cost to fix, and also what surprisingly survived my abuse, and then, you know, what has the support been like from Estarli, and what's my overall conclusion about the bike. So I paid $1,360 for the bike. That was 2 years ago, so that was in 2023. It comes in the specification I bought. This comes with the mud guards, and that's pretty important for commuting. It comes with this pannier rack, and apologies, the bike's quite dirty at the moment. It comes with front lights, which are operated from the controller here, and run off the battery, and rear lights, which run off, I think it's like a AA battery or something like that. It also comes with these Schwab Big Apple tyres. This front one's actually the original tyre, which has done 4,000 miles, but the front ones gets less use than the back one, so actually that's probably the second tyre. So what's it like to ride? Well, given it's an electric bike, it's a bit heavier than a normal bike. So the question is, do you need that electric power all the time you're riding? And you don't. This is pretty efficient. So if you're on the flat, you shouldn't really need the electric power unless you're cycling into a strong wind. You just need it on the hills. And that means that it does significantly extend the range. To the extent that I've done, I think in the Lake District, which is pretty mountainous, we've done something like 110 plus kilometers, and in the Pyrenees Mountains we've climbed up around 800 meters around the Col de Tourmalet, and in both cases we've used, you know, a bit more than half of the battery capacity. And again, that's because you're not cycling, you're not using the power all the time, you're using your sort of your legs for a lot of the motive power. And you can control the level of assistance here. At the moment you see it's off, and we can dial it from 1 up to 5. So this uses a cadence sensor. So if you know what that means, it basically means that as soon as you start pedaling, it detects that you're pedaling and then puts in whatever level of power you've selected there. Some of the more modern ones use torque sensors, where they measure the amount of effort that you're putting in while pedaling, and they sort of match it. And then the up and down controls here, if you have them, increase the amount of effort it puts in relationship to what you're putting in. But actually on this cadence sensor is perfectly fine. You basically dial it in and you get what you selected. As you can see here, it's got a standard derailleur system like the majority of bikes, and it's got 7 speeds. So this is called the 20.7 because it's got 20-inch wheels and 7 speeds. And that's quite important for the hills. You can get a one which has got a belt drive, which is going to keep your clothes cleaner and means you don't have to muck about with oiling this dirty thing. But the chain drive is more efficient. It's why it's still used in bike racing, and it's you need that range of ratios for tackling the hills. Now, I'd like more ratios than this, and actually the more modern bikes have 8 or maybe even 9 speeds. But having said that, we've cycled up the, which was it, the Honister Pass, which is a 1 in 4 at the bottom, and we managed to get up that. That's a bit ridiculous, but it just shows you can do it on this bike. But if you're just a normal person cycling on normal hills, well, to be honest, this is going to be fine. So this is a standard saddle that comes with the bike. It's a standard fitment, so you can change that to anything you like, but actually this has been perfectly fine for me. It's a bit wider than you get on a road bike, but it seems absolutely fine. The tires are a bit balloony. These sort of Schwab Big Apple tires. They've got within here there is some armor, and combining that with the fact that I run tire sealant in here, over 4,000 miles, I have never had a puncture. But also because they're balloon tires, they actually ride a lot better. It's less efficient. I mean, this bike is not as, having said it's reasonably efficient, it's not as efficient as, say, a 28-inch, 29-inch wheel bike. You've got less rolling resistance on that, but it's pretty good. The fact that, unlike electric mountain bikes I've rented, where you basically need power on all the time just to ride on the flat, you don't on this. And that means that it doesn't need as big or heavy a battery as you might on one of those bikes, so it's just like a virtual circle of advantage there. So it's a folding bike. You're really only going to buy a bike like this if you need to fold it. If you don't need to fold your bike, then you might as well buy a full-size bike. It will ride better. But if you need to store this away somewhere compact, you need to get it on trains, in the back of cars, this makes a lot of difference. And you fold it just folds in half here. So Bromptons have like a 3-way fold system. This is just 2-way. It just breaks here, bends, and then this handlebar stem bends down. Now, it is a lot wider than, say, a Brompton. The Brompton, you could consider it's almost like having hand luggage. This is definitely wider, but it's still not so large that you can't easily get it in the sort of entrance vestibule of a train. I've had it in trains, underground trains as well, in the back of the cars. I've had it in the Fiat Panda, had it behind the seats there in the pickup truck. So it's reasonably compact. It is a bit of a lump when it is folded. If you're going to actually carry it about, it's easier to carry it sort of here while it's unfolded because the weight balances out. And although this, I've said it, it's not hugely heavy, I've made it heavier. I've got a lock on there, I've got various accessories, and that all adds to the weight. Now, being a folding bike, Transport for London will allow you to carry this on their trains at any time, whereas for a normal non-folding bike there are restrictions on the time you can take them. It's also noticed that as a proper electric bike, one which complies with the various British standards, it means that is permitted, whereas if you just bought something that's not got the relevant, doesn't comply with the relevant electrically assisted pedal cycle standard, then technically that's not allowed. And you do see notices saying, for example, that you're not allowed to have those electric scooters on trains. Now, when it comes to transporting this, sometimes you can just throw it in a vehicle, for example, as it is. But what I like to do, especially because I'm usually carrying 2 of them, I've built a couple of pallets. You could ratchet strap them down to the pallets and then fit them into the vehicle, and that keeps them secure. Other people have used sort of like plastic boxes or bins to put them in, and that just sort of helps with the transport. Also note that the Brompton does become very compact because effectively the second hinge point is here, so the rear wheel will fold underneath. It's a very good design, but that does mean that anything you put on the back here on the pannier rack you've got to remove. This you could keep on because it doesn't, although you lose that compactness when folded, you don't have to remove anything from the rack when you are folding the bike. So let's look at some of the accessories that I've bought for this bike, and I'll tell you how much they cost and if I think they're worth it. So this is a sort of cheap Chinese, I think it was £25, this one, trunk bag. It's useful, it stores a lot of stuff, and in the side pockets here, these fold down and you can store more things there, but as you can see, it just like goes on, loses shape and just flops down, and I've actually had to put a bit of plywood in there to try and keep it in place. It's not a particularly brilliant piece of kit. Plus normally it's held on with straps underneath, but then I found that it would slide backwards and forwards, and I've actually cut holes in it and cable tied it, so yeah, I'm not necessarily recommending that. So this mirror is, I think it's Briskmore is the brand. This is incredibly useful because while you're cycling, being able to see, well, especially commuting, being able to see what's coming up behind you is very useful. It does give you that sense of security, and you're not feeling you need to look over your shoulder all the time. When you buy it, it actually comes with 2 of these, which is handy because I left the bike somewhere insecure on the stand and it fell over. Normally it's pretty good on the stand, but it was on sort of wobbly ground. It fell over, landed on this, broke it, but I had a second one spare. I fitted this foldy lock. I find this a very useful lock. You can just about get it in and out. This is their gold rated one, but because of its sort of shape, you can get it around a lot of things. Now, I'm still going to be careful about where I leave this. I'm not going to leave this bike parked up in public all day while I'm in an office somewhere. So for me, this is sufficient. It's still reasonably heavy though, so again, it adds to the weight that I'm carrying on the bike. But like a lot of these locks of that, I can't remember how much it was probably getting on for towards the £100 mark. I mentioned using that tyre slime, fantastic stuff. I use it in the mountain bikes. Again, as I say, I've never had a puncture on this bike in 4,000 miles, and that's 4,000 miles of fairly extreme riding. I've also had to buy or find extra tools. I've got tools everywhere in the garage, so extra Allen keys, for example, just because the set it comes with, it's just not really sufficient for certain things. Like you can't do up, I can't remember, it's something like an M8 you need for the crank there, the bolt on the crank. It doesn't come with one of those, so you probably will need to go around your garage, find a few extras to keep in there. It's fairly handy. Although it's difficult to see on Sally's bike, I've fitted a plastic box here so you can put all sorts of stuff in. This is the Mark II plastic box. The first one broke, but the first one was, I don't know, about €10 or something from a French hypermarket. It was just a spur of the moment decision, but actually worked pretty well. And this is actually held on with cable ties, or removable cable ties, so I can take it off if I need to. So how have I used it? What do I use it for? I primarily bought it for commuting. So from cycling to the local train station, folding it up, putting it on the train, then cycling across London and doing the same in reverse and tackling the steep hills on the way home. We also take it away with us when we go camping. We've taken it away when we've taken the car and driven down to Italy, for example. And it is tremendously useful on those sort of holidays because you can drive to somewhere, cycle around a city. You can see a whole city in a day on one of these bikes. So that's really handy. It's not just used in cities. So we've used these bikes on byways, on bridleways, they've ended up on sort of muddy tracks, dirt tracks. They've ended up on sort of really flinty tracks. So they've really had quite a hammering. So it says something that the bike has managed to survive that. And that has taken its toll on various of the components, but the components are generally fairly inexpensive to replace. So let's talk about what I've managed to break on this bike, which is a fair break and wear out. It's a fair degree of things I've broken. So I've gone through about 5 chains of wearing them out. Again, this has got used on dirt tracks, so you've got dirt getting in the chains, and so you're wearing them out. But KMC's Z7 chains, I think about £8 each, so it's nothing to replace them. I do have a chain cleaner tool that I use as well. I've had to replace, I think I've replaced the folding pedals a couple of times. Again, they're fairly cheap. Again, that's because I've accidentally got them underwater, got water in them, in the bearings, ruined the bearings, etc. The freewheeling rear unit, which is a Shimano MFTZ 500-7. I've replaced that once because I wore through the bearings and it went all graunchy. Again, that was me getting water in there. And when I say getting water in there, that's like water splashed up from being off-road. That's not just, oh, it's raining. So I think that was about £17. I've gone through about 4 or 5 sets of brake pads. In long downhill descents, you're using those brake pads, and a lot in city because you're braking at traffic lights all the time. I mentioned the mirror that I broke after I fell off the bike. Sorry, after the bike fell over, but I also sort of managed to crash the bike in London once on a curb that I didn't see. Bike went over, I damaged the stand, and that eventually broke. So I think that was £19. Went to Estarli. So again, it's not bad going back to Estarli for it and finding it's only £19 for a genuine replacement stand. I spent about £4 on lithium grease for the front axle. Again, submerging the front axle in water has not done the bearings any favour, so I had to strip that down, clean it up. It's actually still got the original bearings in there, I think. I just re-greased them. So the going up these 1 in 4 hills, you're putting a huge amount of stress on the frame of the bike, on the handlebar stem, on the pedals. So it's not something I'd advise, but it's a good test of the bike. But over time, then, that over a couple of thousand miles, that's meant that I did have a situation in London where the left-hand crank came loose. Didn't have the M8, I think it is, Allen key to tighten it up, which meant that actually didn't realise at the time, but by the time I got to work, I sort of semi-rounded off the aluminium crank. Nothing you can do about that, really. Had to order a new one from Estarli. They don't do a single crank, they do an entire set. So you get a pair of cranks, you get the chain ring and the plastic guard. So it's a whole set of things, and I think that was about £45, but that's not bad for those components. And they've, again, I've done another couple of thousand miles. It's not come loose again, and I've now got the Allen key with me if I need to tighten it up. Big things, I said about going up these big mountain passes, these steep hills, and putting huge amounts of torque on the handlebars. That's resulted in me actually wearing out the hinge on the handlebar stem at the bottom, and Estarli kindly sent me a replacement for that under warranty. Another problem, I do fold the bike a lot, so the saddle goes up and down a lot. It puts stress on the little cable that goes around, the electrical cable that connects to from the battery to the controller unit, and it actually the wiring started to become intermittent. Undoubtedly, it's not a difficult thing to fix, but because it was under warranty, I wasn't going to get the soldering iron out, so sent it back. I thought they were just going to resolder it. They sent me a brand new battery, so that's actually giving me a bit more battery life, because these batteries like any lithium-ion batteries, the capacity is going to degrade a bit over time. So that was pretty good for me. So I think that's all the things I've managed to break on that bike. I know it sounds a lot, but this bike gets a hammering. What has survived well, the motor still works absolutely perfectly despite being submerged occasionally and getting very dirty. Similarly, the display unit on the handlebars, no issues at all with that. Gets rained on, everything, and it's perfectly fine. And where I've needed them, Estarli have been very good. I mean, they're just up the road. They are, I don't know, 45 minutes drive away. So yeah, I mean, so this is what I feel is the risk. If you buy a bike, order it online, it comes from China, what happens when something goes wrong? I guess you could take it to a bike shop, but can you get the parts for it? You've got to think, what's the after-sales service like? When you've got the physical factory here in the UK, then you're laughing, really. So, what's my conclusion about this bike? Yeah, I've been very pleased with it. It has, in fact, increased my fitness. You wouldn't have thought that for an electric bike, because you think, you're not doing any work, but actually you are. And what it means is that if you live places like this, which is hilly, then it incentivizes you to get out on the bike, because you know that you can tackle those hills, because when you get to the hill, if you're not up to it, you can just put some power on. So instead of thinking, I won't take the bike, you do, and that means you are actually cycling more, and that means your fitness increases. To the extent that I now use the mountain bike more, the old mountain bike, because I'm fitter to use it. It's been great for travel with the camper, because it's just, these days, it's frankly so much easier in a city to cycle around than it is trying to drive around, park, work out the various regulations for emissions, for parking, for all sorts of things. So yeah, bike's no brainer, and you can wheel it along a high street. You could just stop anywhere, so it's perfect for tourism. If I didn't need a folding bike, I wouldn't buy this. I'd have bought possibly the same brand, but bought their non-folding 28.9, and we've just got Sally one of those. That's a stunning bike, because a folding bike's always going to have compromises, but if you've got a sort of regular style bike, it's better for riding because it's more efficient. You've got more sort of presence on the road. And the other thing about these folding bikes, it's true of all these folding bikes, they are compact little units. They've got quite narrow handlebars. You can feel a bit vulnerable, whereas if I get on my full-size mountain bike, you just it's a monster, so you feel much more confident on the road. But that's not a downside of this bike, it's a downside of folding bikes in general. This is the one with the derailleur gear system, and I would stick to that because I live in the hills. If I was somewhere flatter and I didn't need the gears, then maybe I would consider one of those with the sort of belt drive, because that means you've not got anything to maintain. You've not got oily components. You're not going to be getting oil on your clothes. It's all a lot easier. Having said that, I think they're less efficient, which is why people doing racing are still going to be using derailleur systems. So would I buy one again? Yeah, I would. Yeah. Would I want anything different? Maybe more gears, 8 gears, 9 gears, not just 7. But as you've seen, if I can get up Honest to Pass with 7 gears, then I think your average person can get pretty much anywhere on that. So yeah, so that's my review of the bike, the Estarli 20.7. Yeah, it's basically good as far as I'm concerned. I'm very happy with the purchase, and it's given that I've saved myself every time I have to commute into London. I've saved myself driving a diesel vehicle down into town, paying over £10 to park for the day, and then paying for the tube on the other end. So it has rapidly added up savings that have, in 2 years, easily outweighed the cost of the bike. But in a sense, more important to me is the fitness. You know, it has kept me fit. Even if I didn't do anything in the weekends, just the fact that I'm cycling several days a week to get to and from work makes all the difference. Okay, thanks for your time. Hopefully that will be helpful to someone. Okay, see you guys.